Hello and welcome to TV on TV. I'm State Representative Tommy Vitolo. You're watching Brookline Interactive Group. Today is Thursday, March 23rd, and we have a great show for you today with not one, but two interviewees. After we do the news, we're going to talk about the upcoming election. And that election, that town election, is on Tuesday, May 2nd. And one of the townwide races that's competitive is for a commissioner seat on the 5-person Brookline Housing Authority Commission. One of those two candidates, Susan Cohen, is an incumbent, having served one term on the commission already. The other, Kimberly Richardson, is challenging her. Two pre-recorded interviews earlier this week, coming up soon. But first, as always, the news. On Monday, the United States Centers for Disease Control, known as the CDC, confirmed that a deadly fungal strain is now spreading rapidly through specialty hospitals and long-term healthcare facilities across the nation. The infection is a strain of yeast and is especially threatening towards those of medical fragility, for instance, those of lower immunity or nursing home patients. The CDC has already said that the fungus presents a serious global health threat. As part of newly revised plan, the Pentagon said on Tuesday that it will send M1 Abrams tanks to support Ukrainian troops by the fall. This development comes after the administration faced significant scrutiny from the original long-term arrangement that allowed for a year or two before providing the tanks to Ukraine. The first presidential indictment may soon deploy after a long period of grand jury proceedings and legal peril for former President Donald Trump. A Manhattan grand jury is hearing evidence to determine whether Trump illegally falsified business records after his lawyer, Michael Cohen, made secret payments to adult film actress Stephanie Clifford. These payoffs were delivered during the final days of the 2016 presidential campaign to keep her from speaking out about her relations with Trump. This week, President Biden has hosted quite a few celebrities and writers in the White House to bestow National Medals of Arts and National Humanities Medals. The honorees include Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Louis-Dreyfus? We're going to let that go. Bruce Springsteen, Gladys Knight, Amy Tan, and Colson Whitehead. Following an exceedingly dismal global climate report, the UN Secretary General has urged nations to expedite their goals of halting the usage of fossil fuels by a decade. The Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, the MBTA, has been slowly reducing the miles of slow zones imposed a week and a half ago. Slow zones remain on roughly 1/4 of the combined red, blue, orange, and green line tracks. The Brookline Select Board has elected to strip acting from acting Chief of Police Jennifer Pastor's title. Pending a contract agreement, Jen Pastor will serve as Brookline's next Chief of Police. The Brookline Select Board also voted for the May 2023 town meeting to proceed fully in person, beginning on Tuesday, May 23rd, 7 p.m. in the Brookline High School auditorium. And with that, we're going to head over to two pre-recorded interviews for the two candidates for the Brookline Housing Authority Commissioner seat. Vote for one, but not both, on Tuesday, May 2nd. We'll see you on the flip side. And we're back here on TV, hosted by Brookline Interactive Group. And as I said earlier, town elections are coming on Tuesday, May 2nd. We do have a competitive race for the Brookline Housing Authority. And with us today is Susan Cohen, not Susan Cohen, the town meeting member from Precinct 7, but Susan Cohen, the Brookline Housing Authority Commissioner. Susan, great to see you today.
Well, thank you, Tommy. I'm so glad to be here. It's really a pleasure.
We're going to dive right in. Susan, tell us what you've been doing your whole life. Tell us
I've
about
been doing affordable housing my whole life. And it's really amazing when I look back and I try to summarize what I've been doing. I started at Legal Services representing low-income tenants. I moved from there to representing housing authorities all around the Boston area, including Brookline. And then I moved on. I became in-house general counsel in Cambridge. And I've been serving low-income residents all those years. I've gotten completely embedded in how public housing operates, where the shortcomings are, what we need to do, and how we can address the issues that are facing us. And I'll also mention one other thing. As part of my background is representing tenant management corporations, one at Broadway Heath Tenant Management Corporation, which is now the Mildred C. Haley development in Boston. And also for a short period of time, I represented the B.W. Cooper Tenant Management Corporation in New Orleans, which is part of the Housing Authority of New Orleans. So I think I can see things from the tenant side and from the Housing Authority side, and I have been involved in this arena for many, many years. So that's my background.
And how long have you served as a commissioner with BHA?
I've been a commissioner for just about 5 years. It's my first term. It's expiring in May. I'd love to be able to do another term, which will be another 5 years. But I will mention here that I know the BHA inside out because I was their lawyer for probably more than 20 years, ending in about 2011 when I went in-house in Cambridge. So I was very involved in the operations of the BHA. I saw the beginning of steps for success. I saw the BHA grow. I've seen buildings that were newly built when I started working with the BHA now become at the point where they need to be fully rehabilitated. So I remember when those buildings opened up, like the Kickham Apartments on Harvard Street was a brand new building when I started representing the Brookline Housing Authority.
That's amazing. So you've really been at this a long time. You've got tremendous experience. Now, I am sure when you ran 5 years ago successfully, you weren't thinking, okay, I want to be a commissioner to get ready for COVID.
I was not. None of us knew about COVID.
That's right.
Right.
But COVID came, and certainly that impacted both how the BHA as an organization operated, but also how it affected your constituents, the tenants, and how you were able to provide services. Walk us through some of those challenges and how you and your colleagues were able to, if you were able to, overcome those challenges.
Well, I think the BHA staff and commissioners did just a fabulous job responding to COVID. Of course, we were all in shock when it first came down. Everybody had to start working from home, as everybody in the world seemed had to do. And they made that transition very, very effectively. Now, our residents, we needed to keep them safe. That was our highest priority, and particularly in our elderly disabled buildings, which provides housing for probably more than half of our residents. And so we needed to make sure that we had COVID protocols in place. And that was not only for our everyday operations, but also for the rehabilitation that was going on at different developments at that time. And that posed a particular challenge to us because we wanted to not hold up the construction, which was indeed held up because everything had to be rewritten. All the ways that we interacted with our workforce, with the construction that was operating, everything had to be rewritten. And we had to do deep dives into how do we do relocation? We want to keep our residents safe. That's a really complicated process because you have to look at how do you get somebody's stuff packed up safely when you can't even really be in the same room with them? How do they deal with going to a new location, and is the new location going to be a safe place to live? So we addressed all of those things. And I think we also were working very closely with the Brookline Health Department, with the fire department, with the police department to make sure that we could offer residents the opportunity to get vaccines in our community rooms and sometimes in their own units in a safe way. And many, many tenants took advantage of that process.
And so now we're coming out of COVID. Maybe it's gone forever. Maybe it'll always be kicking around, but the MWRA levels in our wastewater are the lowest they've been in over a year. So we're taking a deep breath. What should we expect going forward? What are the big things? What are the big initiatives, the big plans for the Housing Authority in the coming years?
Well, the Housing Authority has started a really aggressive approach to doing deep rehabilitation at our developments. And we've already accomplished and completed that rehabilitation at 61 Park Street, that's also known as O'Shea House, and at 90 Longwood, which is Morse Apartments. And I think if you looked at those buildings now, you'd see they are completely refreshed. They're beautiful buildings, and they will serve our elders and disabled people for many years. We're going to continue that process. Sussman House of 50 Pleasant Street, we're in process right now. Construction's about to begin. And we see that 32 Marion Street, with the help of our Representative Vitolo, who got us some very good legislation that will help us with both our procurement and our energy, that is going to be completely replaced, and we're going to have some additional affordable units at 32 Marion Colonel Floyd Apartments. So I'm really looking forward to seeing those projects go on. But in addition to that, there's all sorts of things that we need to be looking at. One of the most prominent things on my mind is how do we save our state-assisted public housing? We have the good fortune to have like an amazing asset in our town, which is our state-assisted public housing. This is infrastructure. These are real buildings. But unfortunately, the funding for those buildings has been really just so inadequate that, and you cannot, anybody who owns real property, who has lived in real property understands you cannot leave a building without maintaining it, without rehabilitating it, without taking care of it. But you need money to do that. And our funding has been so inadequate. So we're working really hard on different approaches to renovating those units. And I think I'm in a good position to help with that, because I'm really familiar with a lot of the potential programs that we might bring to bear on it. So for instance, we're doing these projects on our federal side that are going to generate the ability to put some new subsidies into state-assisted public housing if we get the other pieces in place. I'm also familiar with the ways that the different kinds of financing programs work when you're going to do deep rehab, because I've been doing it in Cambridge, I've been doing it in Brookline, and I understand how these patchworks of financing work. This is not easy stuff. I need help with it. I have outside lawyers that help with that, but I could have that conversation because we've been through it. And I can help Brookline put together a package of resources, really. We can partner with the town. We can partner with DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Developments, which has both the traditional funding that housing authorities get for operation and capital improvements, but they also have what's called Moving to Work Authority, which gives them a lot of flexibility to use their own Section 8 vouchers. They could help us. We could go after that money. We could work with DHC to not only give us the very small amount that the legislature has appropriated, but we could also be looking for other resources that they have at their disposal. As well, there's some really great stuff that's out on the street right now, where the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization has a housing justice campaign. And one of their main planks is to increase funding both for the operating budget at state-assisted public housing, but also to have a very generous bond bill passed so that we could really take care of the deep, deep capital needs that these projects are going to need. And we need to save these units, because every time we lose a unit that can't be operated because its condition is bad, then our challenges to provide affordable housing to everyone are just doubled. So we have to do something. And so this is the direction we need to go. There's lots of other things that we can do. We can take advantage of the land that we own to develop additional housing on it. We could collaborate with other housing authorities to put together the resources that they have. And there are resources that are out there, both in places like Boston and Cambridge, and we could try to draw on those. We could collaborate with the other boards in town, the Housing Advisory Board. We could collaborate with nonprofits like the Brookline Housing Development Corporation, which used to be Brookline Improvement Corporation. There's a lot of resources, and what we need to do is we need to have the ability to put them all together and focus intently on preserving and rehabilitating our developments. And we could also be looking to expand our services. There's something called sponsor-based housing, where you work with a service provider and you could provide the subsidy to the service provider, who can then provide both housing and subsidy to somebody who might be a person in need, either for mental health services or for medical services. There's lots of different models out there, and we could be working on those models to serve our residents, as I think the Housing Authority has just done a wonderful job of providing a wide range of services to support our residents, be they young or be they old.
Susan, we're almost out of time. I told you the interviews go quick. Any final thoughts for voters for your election on Tuesday, May 2nd?
I would like to ask for your vote because I think I have the background, the skills, the ability, and the vision to continue to serve Brookline. It's been a lifetime effort on my part to work on these very knotty, hard issues. And I think I can continue to do that in collaboration with our staff and the other commissioners in a way that will be very effective. These are critical years. We can't be losing our housing. We need to be expanding it and saving it. And I think I'm the best person for that job.
Susan, thanks for coming on the show. I wish you the best of luck in the upcoming election. And thank you so much for all of your service to date.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity.
And as I mentioned today, here on Brookline Interactive Group, we've got our second of two candidates for the Housing Authority. With us today is candidate Kimberly Richardson. Kimberly, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Kimberly, the first thing we ask everybody is, what have you been doing your whole life? What's going on?
Oh boy, what have I been doing my whole life? Raising a ton of kids. That's first. I have 8 children. Well, they're not children anymore. They're adults. So I have 8 adults. But for most of my life, I dedicated that to raising 6 young men and 2 young ladies, and working for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So I've been doing that for 26 years, I think. So that's what I've been doing most of my life.
But you've also been active in Brookline, both the nonprofit space and in local government space. So tell us about some of the things you've been doing, some of your work that's benefited the community at large.
So I've been involved with Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity. I just got involved with Women Thriving. I'm involved with Brookline Community Development Corporation, and a host of other committees and things in Brookline. So I could talk about how I got involved with those things, if that's helpful, or I could, I'm not sure where you want me to go because I don't want to be like long-winded. I could be that way. I could, I'm doing a lot in Brookline, right? I've been here for almost 11 years, right? So a little over a decade. And probably the first 7 years that I was here, I was really quiet. I just went to work and came home. And there's many reasons why I did that. One, which would be just fear in general. I live in public housing, and that was it was fearful. And that's a long story. So probably not for this segment, but I first got, I came to Brookline. I thought this was a great place to be. I wanted my kids to get a really good education, and kind of got involved in the education. My kids got involved in it. It wasn't as great as I thought it would be. And so I got involved with Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity because they were doing things in the school. And I wanted to make the school more equitable for kids of color and my own children. And so that kind of jump-started, I guess, my political career, so to speak. Like I saw that, I saw a need. My voice was silent for 7 years. And I know that other people who lived in housing, their voice was silent. So I don't want to be silent anymore. So I just jumped into things.
And you also have an academic background that points you in this direction. Tell us about your professional training.
Yeah, so it's funny, right? I'm a social worker, but as a little girl, I always wanted to be an attorney. So I got started with an internship at the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, and then I started working for the court system because I just knew I'd be a lawyer. And then I decided to go back to school and got into social work. And that was also instrumental in me becoming more of an advocate and a community activist, I saw so much need for institutional level change. And I just, I even saw when I went to my own school, it was like, what is happening here? This school is not as diverse as I would love it to be. It just needed so much. And so I started advocating in the school, trying to make some change there, including like, let's pay our interns because it's unfair to be like doing that. So it kind of, that my career, my academic career also was like helpful in just like jumping me into this work. Because what I feel like politics is social work for me. Like doing this work feels like my social work. My job as a social worker. Yeah.
And so now you're a candidate for the Housing Authority for the information voters. It's a 5-year term, and there are 2 people, of course, running for 1 seat. Tell us about that decision to run for housing and what you hope to achieve.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I woke up one day and said, I'm going to run for Housing Authority, right? Like I have been living here for a long time, and there was not a lot of things that was happening. There's not been a lot of change that happened at this ground level, right? When I say ground level, I mean as far as residents go. So there's not a lot of change here. I see people complaining, and it didn't feel right. And so I kept thinking, one day I'm going to find a seat where I can be more helpful to the residents, right? And so then I learned that the Housing Authority Commissioners, these 5 people, are kind of like the overseers of all things Brookline housing, right? Like they're making these decisions, the policies, the things that happen, and they don't. I don't want to talk about like what they're not doing, because I think whatever they're doing. But I feel like the reason why I made a decision to run is that I wanted a voice at that table where the decisions are being made about residents, right? So there's no representation, and I wanted to be the voice that represent, right? And so when I talk about representation, I talk about several things. I talk about BHA residents, family residents, right? I was a single mom living in public housing, struggling for years, and I didn't get a lot of support. And then a lot of things hadn't changed, even in like my living environment. And I don't want that for another single mother for the next 11 years, right? And I talk about representation. There's no person of color on that commission, and we need that representation. So I just want to, I want the people on the commission to allow me to have bring my perspective to that table so they can see a different side, a side that I don't think that they see. And one of the things that I'd like to change, I'd like the commission to do like this annual check-in, like walkthrough of properties. I want them to see how we live. I want them to understand that when you hear people talk about their living conditions, I want them to see it to be real. I also want them to care about not just like, I want residents to be whole. When I say whole, I want their home to be healthy. I want them to be healthy, had like health and wellness, right? Sometimes you go to these big apartment buildings, people have nice gyms, they can go down to the treadmill and burn off some energy. It's good for their mental health. It's good for their physical health. It's just like, I want change. And I think that there's time for representation and change. And that's why I'm running.
So you mentioned sort of an annual walk through the properties, make sure that, each person's home, not just the hallways, are in good shape. And you mentioned some improved community space. Do you have any thoughts about adding units or changing the use of units, or how the town should work through the existing BHA properties, or perhaps, expanding?
Oh, it'd be great to expand it. I mean, and I don't know like how they would do that. Like I would, this is what I would love. Like in an ideal world, this would be perfect. And I don't know if that happened. Like at some point, there's people in BHA who've gotten to a certain level and they've grown. And now like they want an opportunity at home ownership, right? that'd be lovely if they had access to like affordable home ownership. And so that now these people are transitioning out of BHA into their home, and other people can get the opportunity to like move into BHA and access this wonderful community and these great schools, right? And so that's one of my like wish lists. Do I think I can accomplish that? I don't know, but I'd like to talk about it. I like to hear people talking about it, right? I love housing. I love to see more family housing that's federal. And I don't necessarily know how to do that, Tommy, right? But it'd be great because as far as the state goes, there's not a lot of funding here. But I also want to look for more money. There has to be money out there. There has to be grants. There has to be people that want to do things for people who are the most underserved. And I want to help figure out how we can do that. And again, I'll keep saying, I just want I want representation, and I want to be that representation. I want to be that voice because I think people deserve a different perspective.
That's great. That's really helpful, I think, for folks to understand, what you're thinking about, or, where you're going. Of course, your opponent is an incumbent, and so she has a record, and you've got ideas. So folks want to hear those ideas. Do you have anything else creative, unlikely, but anything else you want to talk about in terms of where you can imagine the BHA being in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, right? What's your vision for maybe what it can become?
So one, in the next 5 to 10 years, what would I like it to become? I don't know how to give it a time frame, right? 5 or 10 years. I don't know how long it takes. But so one of the things that so the definition, like for me, for home, right? Home is a safe place. Home is a place where you want to be, where you walk into the doors and you're happy and you're safe and you're comfortable and there's no stress. And so a lot of homes, right? And they're not that great. There's a lot of things happening in these properties, and people have heard it in town when we've been in these meetings and people talk about just different things. And I want people to be happy when they walk through their doors. I want BHA to think more about the people at the ground level. I want, I know, someone said to me that most of the stuff that BHA commissioners do is about the money, right? I want to see the money spent at the ground level, just sometimes, like I don't want to hear, oh, we don't have enough money for state funding. Oh, we don't have that. There's a way to make it happen. And I want in the next 10 years to make that happen. I want people to be happy when they come home. I want to just change the system. I want to change the way BHA. I just want people to be well represented. And that's what I want in the next 10 years. I want a board that represents people who have like this, like, let me take that back. I'm not asking for this whole entire board to be like a BHA residence. That would be unrealistic, and that doesn't even make sense at all, right? But what I want is people to have a voice, right? And we have two different residents at BHA, right? We have the seniors and we have families. I want that to be represented on a commission, right? And I want the commission to like start like really understanding what the lives of BHA residents are. I don't know that they know that. I don't, because if really did, Tommy, I can't keep saying that for the same 11 years that I've been here, things haven't changed. When I moved here, I still have some of the same complaints that I had, and that's not fair. I want the people that they hire, as far as staff goes, not to make residents feel threatened, right? I want to share this very personal, like, this is like really triggering for me. To go to my mailbox was triggering for me for most of my time here, right? Didn't know what I would get in the mailbox. And I purposely would not check my mail when I came home because I didn't know what was going to be in my mailbox and I needed to rest at night. So I checked my mail in the morning. So whatever was in that mailbox that possibly would come from housing, I could deal with in the morning and I can call right away to fix the problem, right? No one should have to live that way. Why do I live that way? Because I've been homeless before. I lived in a hotel outside of the city, had to drive an hour and a half with 5 children and a newborn, right? Living in a filthy hotel, and then drive them back into the city of Boston to go to school. So I shouldn't be triggered in my home. I shouldn't receive letters from housing that makes me triggered or makes me feel threatened. And that's some of the stuff that's happening, and it shouldn't happen. And I know that the commission is all things Brookline, right? They are in charge of staff. They are in charge of budget. They are in charge of resident service. They're in charge. And I want to have a voice at the table where those people are in charge so they can hear a different perspective. And so maybe, just maybe, the residents won't be last.
Kimberly, I want to thank you for coming on to the show. Folks, Kimberly Richardson, candidate for the Housing Authority. The election is Tuesday, May 2nd. I hope you will get yourself educated on the candidates, and I hope you will get out and vote. Kimberly, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Tommy. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.